Hey guys, Clove Hitch here. I wanted to do a showcase on my Arc Stormweaver. I just finished my ladder grind Tuesday night. I unfortunately had to go back to the real world, but I hit a mean rank 69 on ladder, so I'm pretty happy with that. God, I wish I could keep grinding. I wish my girlfriend, grad school, my job, my stepchildren, if only none of that existed, fuck, dude, I would become PoE 2. But I figure to cap it off, I do an overview of my character and show you guys what I cooked up. So here's the basic showcase of my character, or I guess a mapping showcase. This is what it plays like. I'll go over the pros and cons of the build. Overall, it's insanely strong and honestly has really great clear and really good boss damage without really specializing in either, but it does well at both. I really like the regen on it. It has really killer max hit, and yeah, it's just fun. It's really fast too. I really like the map clearing with ball lightning is honestly cracked. Like being able to cast, like as you start fighting, sending a ball lightning out to continue your movement for you while you're casting and shitting on everything. It makes mapping go super fast. Like honestly, this map in this showcase was like the fastest map I've ever done. I didn't even know there were rares in the map, and I have like increased rare modifiers on this. That was on the map. This is like 30% more damage as well. My Atlas is spec'd into rares get extra mods and stuff like that. And yeah, this is a level 80 map too. It was just a cracked map, and yeah, it is. I just kind of went through it smooth as butter. I'll admit the build probably isn't like too well optimized, but honestly, who gives a fuck? Like, it does what it needs to do. I don't really have any issues clearing content unless it's fucking Sun Temple, which is an absolute dog shit map. But you know, what can you do? I skip over the shrines in this showcase too because I don't want to corrupt it. You know what I mean? Like some people they'll do like a speed shrine on when they're showing it off, and it's just obviously not what the build is. But yeah, the build is pretty simple. To be frank, like it's just a classic mind over matter mana stacker. There's no really it has a slight twist using shock magnitude, but that's pretty much it. We just grab all the nodes in our tree. We grab the ascendancy nodes that allow us to scale arcane surge with mana, and yeah, then you just stack hella mana and it scales pretty much every aspect of your character. But anyways, here's the boss showcase. This is how bossing goes. Bossing goes really well on this character. This one's a little rough because I didn't see he had Lightning Storm. When you increase boss difficulty, they get the little mods on him, and Lightning Storm hits hard as fuck. And I have cap lightning res too, and it was still slapping me. But of course, like the build just has killer max hit and great regen, so it really wasn't an issue. And I also forgot overcharge support. My shock should be like 78% right now, but it's only 63. Like I said, it's not optimized. Who gives a fuck? He died, whatever. Let's look at how the build works. So, like I said, classic mana stacker, nothing crazy. Stormweaver is a really good ascendancy for mana stacking. 4% mana on these. You get Arcane Surge. This gives us 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regen. Remember, those are more modifiers. And then we scale it with our ascendancy, Force of Will, 1% increased effect. Arcane Surge per 15 max mana. So that just makes this cracked out once you get an ass ton of mana. And then instead of taking Heart of the Storm, I go with Strike Twice because again, we scale shock magnitude, and this is an insane node. And then in the tree, you take all the mana stacking stuff. So Arcane Intensity. This is a pseudo mana stacking. It's you stack in, but you always stack in because it stacks mana. Arcane Surge effect over here. And yeah, you pretty much just scale everything with mana. That's how the build works. This is not a new concept at all. This is just a classic PoE archetype. But to get a little more in depth with the scaling of it, right? We have Arcane Surge being scaled, so that's mana regen and cast speed from here. We also have our max hit being scaled through Mind Over Matter. And we have obviously our 2 damage scalers over here with Arcane Intensity and Pure Power. And then you also take Archmage, right? Archmage is just a classic. This is extremely good for mana stacking. To note the quality here, by the way, the quality of Archmage is 2% of the added effects, so it's 2% more damage for each 100 mana. So it's really important to quality of this gem. Like for me right now, that's 72% more damage. It's absolutely insane. And then to point out too, I already mentioned this, but Arcane Surge scales mana regen, which is super OP. Like the more mana you get, the easier it is to regen, and it makes you die. Like it makes you really hard to kill. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that there's a little twist with shock magnitude, and that is going to be coming from Strike Twice. So Strike Twice essentially says that all of our magnitude values are doubled, right? Because we apply 2 shocks. So with overcharge support on, which is this right here, and 100% of shock magnitude is 20%, right? So this is 15% shock magnitude, but then it's doubled by Strike Twice. And it's an insane multiplier that's super easy to get. And you can get it on these jewels. Like I have an insane jewel over here. I think it's up here. Like this jewel is absolutely cracked. I can only get minion. I only ever exalt minion critical hit chance for whatever reason. But yeah, these jewels, you can get a maximum of 35% magnitude, which I think is like 14% or something like that. It's 14% more damage because it's 7% total, but then you double it with Strike Twice. So it just hits hard as fuck. And these nodes give you 14% more damage. So it's just a really effective way to scale damage. And which this brings me to Arc. So Arc is sick because Spark is absolutely fucking retirement home, sleeper as fuck dog shit, which is obviously busted. It's honestly probably better, and you should probably go with Captain Lance's build. To be frank, I'm sure it's better in every way, but I don't need someone to wipe my ass for me, nor do I need warm milk to go to sleep. So I, in turn, cannot use Spark because it's so fucking lame. Also, aside from my insane bias, there's a functional component as well. The way that shock works in this game is that shock scales off the magnitude of the hit. So the harder you hit, the easier and more likely you are to shock the target. So Arc is really effective here because the first hit just hits hard as balls, and then it loses damage as it chains. Whereas with Spark, because it's just a bunch of shitty little projectiles fucking flying all over, and you need like 1,500 of them to actually hit the fucking target, it doesn't shock as consistently. Obviously, this is offset by the fact that you can just hold the button down for like a fucking hour, and then anything on the screen is instant auto dead and for sure shocked. But overall, the actual single cast, comparatively to Arc, has a much, much lower shock chance. And like I said, Arc mitigates that problem through its max hit. Also, it's just a way more fucking Chad skill than Perma Virgin Card Spark. So, do with that what you will. But anyways, I digress. So on top of mana, we use shock magnitude, and you want to take as much of it as you can. Like I grab all of the shock magnitude on this tree. This node is absolutely disgusting. And then, of course, you have all of the shock jewels. And again, these are like 14% more damage per jewel. And then going over arc links, I'll go over this really quick. So actually, arc links are kind of interesting. So I take Shock Siphon. Shock Siphon is absolutely cracked for keeping you alive in maps, because I don't have the energy recoup, because actually the pinnacle content in the game is your 4th ascendancy, and fighting the fucking stupid bird boss in Ultimatum is literally the hardest fucking thing in the game. So I'll only ever have 3 ascendancy points. Whatever, no big deal. But I take Shock Siphon. This actually gives you a ton with how much shock chance I have and just how hard arc hits. Like there's so much regen on this. And this will keep you alive through a lot of shit. We just have chain support, inspiration, arcane tempo, because it just feels good. I don't run crits on this because scaling crit is way too impossible. And then you have overcharge. So when I'm fighting bosses, you take off Shock Siphon, you throw on overcharge support. This gives you 15% shock increase value, which is then doubled. So this effectively is 30% more value of shock, and it's so much damage. But anyways, let's go over the elephant in the room, which is this bad boy. So if you notice my ES, I'm at 3,100. We take it off, I go down to 0. So how this works, I'm pretty sure this is how it works, is that what this does is it takes all of your base ES, so all of your base ES off gear, and then it converts it to mana. That mana is then applied to your mana pool, and it gets all the percent max mana scalers. Like if I go to Doriani over here and I refund this, it's like 1,000 mana, right? So I lose, it's like 800 mana. So Elder's Battery is absolutely fucking insane. And I also get 4700 ES. But what we do is we take our base ES and we just convert it to mana because this is so much damage. This is so high value. And then you throw on Everlasting Gaze, and what it does, it takes 30% of this mana value that you have and then applies it back to your character. And then this is it benefits from all the extra ES nodes, which I don't even which I have like right here. All of this gives me more ES. So it's just an insane way to scale max hit. Like, it's absolutely nuts. But I want to point out, like I said earlier, Everlasting Gaze is not required. It's, of course, absolutely fucking broken, and it makes the build insane. And it's probably going to get nerfed into the ground, as it should. But as of right now, like, you don't need it. I was doing T15s long before I had it. Of course, it's your number one most important item. Your first 60, 70, however it's going to cost, Exiles should go to this because it's absolutely busted. But you can do this without this. This is not required. And now I'll go into CI and recoup. So I don't know if CI is bait. Like, it kind of, I think I have like a little bit of survivorship bias here where like I think CI kind of sucks ass, but I also have been CI for quite a while now, and I just don't notice chaos damage. The other thing too is like damage, like elemental damage and chaos damage, you don't really notice it until you start getting into the higher tiers of maps. Like, it doesn't really do shit. Like, you can map with 30% Ellie res across the board for like the first 10 tiers of maps, and it doesn't matter. But as you like go up, you start to really notice, like on that boss fight, like, wow, lightning hits fucking hard as balls. And I would obviously die if I was at 30% lightning res there. It's kind of the same thing with chaos. Like, I felt like I didn't really need it. Like, 30% chaos res was fine, and I feel like I don't need it now. But the honest truth is that I just don't notice it anymore because I have CI. So maybe this is worth it. Maybe it isn't. I think if I was going back into it, I wouldn't run CI. And the other thing that sucks about CI is you had to lose recoup. So I lost this node right here, and this node is insane for recoup. And I think there's probably more survivability from dropping CI, saying fuck all these shitty little recharge nodes, grabbing Heart of the Storm instead of Shock Twice, and then just going into extra recoup stuff over here. And I think this would be absolutely nuts in terms of like regen. And I'd go back into adverse growth as well. There's also a belt that gives you 50% mana taken or mana fucking recouped, which is insane. And I think the try recoup would be way better than what I have right now. I think, unless chaos damage is absolutely nuts. But you have to remember, like, when you click chaos inoculation, you lose. Like, I lose out on a 1500 health pool. Like, by not having this, it's 1500 life just gone out the gate. And like, I could pot this life, it could be recouped. I could recoup life while I'm recouping mana and while I'm recouping ES. Like, it's kind of a huge value loss. So it's something to keep in mind. The last thing I wanted to go over with this build was comboing. So this is like something that actually is part of PoE 2, and it's something that took me a minute to learn. Because obviously, like in PoE 1, right? Like, everything's just a one button build. You just walk around and like spam your shit. Who cares? But the reality is, like, comboing with your character and pressing your buttons is like, it's like 300% more damage. Like, if you're doing breach, it is the literal difference between breach, like farming breach catalyst, or being Mia Khalifa fucking gangbanged and losing 10% XP the waystone and dying instantly. Pressing your buttons in this game is huge. Like, just walk around dropping Orb of Storms, hitting Sigil of Power, and then mana tempesting. This is literally like 300% more damage. Like, this is so much more damage. And it's more clear because Mana Tempest, it causes your arc to chain 3 additional times, and then through a chain support, it chains 6 more times. And because of the quality on arc, or the effective damage per chain on arc, this is 65% more damage just from the chains alone, on top of the 82% damage you get as lightning, on top of I think it's 52% from Sigil of Power when it's at max stages. And then, of course, the exposure effect and the extra damage from Order of Storms. Like, it's just so much damage that you miss out on not comboing. And yeah, that is just it's really important to like know how to press your buttons. Obviously, like in the showcase, like, I do so much damage now, I don't give a fuck. I just press arc. Like, if there's like a big mob or a couple elites, yeah, like, I'll start throwing everything down and throw down or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, comboing is really important. And you got to make sure you understand, like, am I getting the most damage out of the things I have available? The other thing too is sick about this build, absolutely fucking dank, is the ball lightning orb combo. I mean, this shit, dude, this is one of my favorite parts of the game because it allows you to maintain mobility while you're casting. I mentioned this already, because casting slows you down, but then you can teleport this, and this moves faster too, than running. And yeah, you just throw acceleration on it. Like the only thing we use this for is to teleport to it. Like we don't need any extra damage. On top of that, Lightning Warp has a few cool little things with it. It's actually really good to Lightning Warp with Soul Drain. You want to like constantly be calling shit because it's 3% of mana per second. This is an insane amount of regen. Also, running in Orb of Storms, you have Mana Font as well to get even more mana regen, and this is all scaled by mana as well. So this is so much regeneration between these two things. So calling mobs is really important. On top of Lightning Warp, where the fuck is it? I take Energy Barrier. So this is kind of a fun little interaction too. Like when you're sitting there getting like fucked up and pummeled by mobs, Energy Bearing, just like mashing Lightning Warp to get the fuck out. If something stuns you while you do it, you just get ES regen. You immediately start regenerating your energy shield, and that in combination with your mana, it'll keep you alive through a lot of shit. Also, this combo is really nice. There are certain dogs, especially in fucking Seepage, Jesus Christ. Like, when you have a rare mod with like 18 fucking mods on it, and one of them is like temporal, whatever the fuck, and it's hasted, and it gets pissed off, and it just beats the shit out of you, the only way you can get away from it is through Ball Lightning Lightning Warp. Like, you Ball Lightning through it, one the opposite way. It's like classic LeBlanc League of Legends, right? Throw your Lightning Warp, one the opposite direction, they chase you down, you Lightning Warp out. So there's just a ton of really cool utility in this build that I love, and it's so smooth to play. Finally, in terms of like where I plan to go with it, there's not really a whole lot behind in terms of like what else I can do. Obviously, like I can get better gear and scale more mana. Like I think Lance's mana pool is insane. He's like 4,200, and I need to get a few more nodes. I think all the rest of my nodes will go into just ES value, like this one right here. This is absolutely cracked. This is fucking 70% ES for 3 points. Like that is just a 23% ES per point. Is crazy. The last thing I want to do that I think will be nuts is Lightning Conduit. So because we stack so much shock, our shock total value I think is 152% or 156 because it's 78%. So if you have 156%, how Lightning Conduit reads is that it's 100% more damage with hits per 5% of shock on the enemy. So this is kind of insane. So if we have 156% shock on the enemy, it's theoretically 3,100% more damage. I don't really know how good this is because honestly, it's so dog shit to cast. Like, fucking good luck. The shock usually falls off, usually gets stunned. It's actually really hard to use and get it consistently, but I think it would hit really hard. I'm not totally sure. And given the nerfs on cast on shock, like obviously this is pretty horrendous as it sits. But they said that it scales with monster power, similar to Warcries. So I think that if I need 60 spirit on a chess piece. So 60 spirit on a chess piece that has a lot of energy shield, because that's obviously what you're scaling. Like if I take this off, I lose. It's literally fucking 600 mana. It's so much mana. So you need to have a high ES base chess piece. But if I could get one of those with, like, if this max life was 60 spirit, theoretically, and assuming the shock isn't dog shit, you could just be casting Lightning Warp and then nuking him with Lightning Conduit, and it would just be super cracked. But again, I don't actually know. Well, that'll be maybe I'll make a build guide. That depends. But yeah, that's all I wanted to show you guys. Just that's the character. If you guys want a build guide, let me know in the comments. I actually honestly don't know if people are even going to care. But if I see a lot of sentiment for like, and I can go through the campaign and when to swap from. Sorry to admit, but you do have to use Spark in the campaign. Arc is fucking total dog shit in the campaign. But there is a Spark to Arc swap, which I can explain. And yeah, I can go through in a much more granular detail of like what you want your items to look like and how you want to start your tree and that sort of thing. I'm planning to do videos on, mapping and like how to use your waystones properly and how to use the lost towers and how to juice and get things irradiated and corrupted at the same time and that sort of thing. And I'll probably do some currency generation as well because I noticed that everyone is just poor as all fuck. So I'll explain that too. But yeah, just let me know you guys. But yeah, other than that, fucking deuces, boys.